So this is another thumbnail with my face on it, obviously. And that way it's obviously talking about Classic, etc. And there it is.
Okay, which one is better? That's the big question, right? The big serious question. And as serious as that question is, it might...
No, it's not. Classic's better. It's a better game.
Not be ideal. Really, Modern WoW and Classic are super different games. So, what is that, the end of the video? No, it's not. Today, we are going to get down to the fundamental underpinnings of what makes them different, how the industry has shaped the design of those games, how those games are a reflection of their time, and in turn, how all of that has shaped how we interact with them. Our digital lives are, by default, an all-out assault. Every service is vying for your time, whether it's Netflix getting you to watch, Twitter getting you stuck in your timeline, or games as a service just dangling, a carrot of loot in front of you. Everyone wants your time. And we all
money.
Know this is the case now more than ever. Everyone's fighting for watch time, for engagement. Yet, if you're anything like me, you might actually be feeling a bit less satisfied in general with your products and your services than you did in the past.
Yep, that's
and
about
yes,
right.
I know this is actually tied directly to World of Warcraft and how Classic and Live are fundamentally different games. So we're going to start off this video in good fashion by building our foundations. What makes an MMO at its core work? Well, I stumbled upon what I think is the most basic truth of a successful MMO when I was rereading Ray Dalio's principles.
All right.
Cultivate meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Yes, it's a snippet from what is seen as a business management book, but I think it's spot on here. Work.
Yeah, obviously this is true. This is something he said in another video before. It's very, very true. Classic WoW obviously fulfills that to a T, and that's one of the big reasons why it's so successful.
Is that not the thing we're trying to escape from when we play World of Warcraft?
Yeah,
Far from it, I would argue, actually. In fact, I think that providing meaningful work is exactly what allowed World of Warcraft to be a successful game. Yet,
that's right. I mean, like, this is the whole fucking thing, right? You go to fucking work. You work at Taco Bell, and you bust your fucking dick off. You're sitting there making tacos all day, all night. You're staying until 11:30. You've got 10 different stoners that show up that want to see if you can have a Choco Taco. You have to explain to them that you discontinued Choco Tacos in 2004, and then they get sad about it. Then you explain that Taco Bell died in 2005. Taco Bell dog died in 2005, and then they're crying and they won't leave. And you have to deal with all of this fucking bullshit, but then somehow the manager's friend or their son or something like that applies, and they start working there for a week, and then this fucker gets promoted over you, and you don't have any control over that because the world is completely outside of your control, and it's dictated by people that have more power than you do, and there's nothing that you can do. Like, no, I'm serious. Like, you bust your ass, you work so hard, and then somebody else gets ahead of you by nature of, having, like, this, that, or the other thing. And in WoW, you fucking have to do the same thing. Like, if you want to get to level 37, you do this. If you want to get this gear, you do that. And it's very, very meaningful, and it gives people a reward structure that's dependable and reliable that real life doesn't offer.
As we have moved through the years, we have seen Blizzard's attitude towards the work aspects of the game actually change. World of Warcraft really did start off as an MMO RPG. The MMO part was the players, and the RPG part was pretty darn traditional, if maybe a little bit more forgiving than what was normal for MMORPGs at the time. The mechanics of the game were pretty light touch. Its pacing was very slow by today's standards, but it definitely was faster paced than most other MMOs of the time. Goals were pretty long term, and bar the RNG of getting a drop or not, there was pretty much no getting around the fact that your goals would take a long ass time to accomplish. Things just took a long time, and this holds at every resolution. Leveling your character, far longer in Classic. Clearing a camp of mobs, far longer in Classic.
There it is.
Gearing up, far longer in Classic. It was a long, slow game where the results of your actions were pretty darn clear for the most part. It had a number of very large goals for players to hit, such as unlocking mounts, and those things would take a long time, and that served as the work goal for many people. So do we log in to work? I'd actually say so. For the most part, I don't think people log into it.
You're not going to make when we read this here, the comparison to Manager's Son and Stern Benefits? Well, it happens in WoW too. I mean, like, let's say you're like the GM's girlfriend and somehow you just end up with the Binding of Thunder Fury. Yeah, of course it happens in WoW, right? But there's a much stronger correlation between the amount of work that you're able to put into the game and what you get out of it than there is in real life, because there are things that are more dependable and reliable in the game. Like, obviously, there's always ways that people that have money and resources and influence can gain advantages in ways that are unfair. But just because those exist in all aspects of the world doesn't mean that they're less prevalent or more prevalent in other different aspects. And in the aspects that are less prevalent in, like classic WoW, for example, you're able to get something out of it and you feel like you're actually doing something meaningful because, for the most part, everybody's on the same playing field. Like, just because like one person gets Thunder Fury or something and you don't have that, that doesn't offset the entire rest of the game basically having an effort reward structure that's much more fulfilling than real life.
An MMO for some high-octane gameplay. Frankly, I think other genres tend to do that better. I think people log on to something like World of Warcraft because, well, if you're anything like me, you want to progress your character. You want to progress something that you feel like lasts and has meaning. Unlike the real world, though, the path to progress in an MMO is laid out in front of you. It's pretty darn fair, so simple. You chip away at it, and I'd say that is what is meaningful work. You put in the time, you get some progress. The success of an MMO will hinge on its ability to create work that players can derive some meaning and satisfaction from. So doing my Netherwing dailies on 2 characters before mounts were account-wide, that was work. But I was pretty happy at the end. It was all in the service of a self-set goal for my character, so when I unlocked it, I felt fantastic, and the work felt it was really a bit meaningful. The same applies to gearing and to just about everything else, which is what brings us on to relationships, the other pillar of success that we identified from the book Principles. Long-term MMO retention comes when work and relationships are in a positive feedback loop at all resolutions.
Somebody says that we watched this before. Let's just go ahead. We're going to get this out of the way right now. So there's this video right here. It came out 2 days ago. So I'm going to show you how this is different. So there's another video that he made this time, right? This was 5 days ago. So these are 2 separate videos that exist, but the thumbnail is different. Okay, so we did not watch the same. It's not the same video. Okay, guys?
And what does this mean? Well, it means that your work should involve other people to a degree.
Okay.
Now, the feedback loop is when doing work incentivizes teaming up with other people.
There it is.
And the more resolutions that happens at, the better. So take the smallest scale, fighting a small camp of enemies.
Exactly.
If you benefit massively from doing that with a friend, in the most simple of tasks, then that will naturally extend out to you wanting to complete your long-term lofty goals, such as gearing a character. So, as you can see, visceral excitement really just has not been important so far in this video. Now, sure, a tense boss kill, that's incredible, right? But I think most people who play an MMO, they're searching for a long-term source of meaningful interactions. A digital world that feels like another home.
That's what matters.
And this is where we get into the problematic territory that somewhat goes against that. The instant gratification quick hit. It might actually be part of why World of Warcraft was so darn successful in the beginning, because you've got to remember the time in which World of Warcraft came out. World of Warcraft in 2004, this might get some people, but it was a casual as hell game by the standards of the time. Not losing items on death, quests hand-holding you, no big PvP focus, rested XP. Yeah, World of Warcraft was the most accessible MMO of its time. It was pretty simple. It had clear 3D graphics, simple, understandable UI, and Blizzard Entertainment's trademark polish. Now, I don't mean that as a dig, not at all. It shows that World of Warcraft was the game that was able to massively expand the scope of the genre. When we look back at vanilla, we see it as being a slow, punishing game. Yet, as compared to its contemporaries, to the other games at the time that people were playing, like the EverQuest and the Ultimas, classic WoW was fast-paced and accessible. So it's pretty clear that those aspects.
So it was the BFA of 2004. That's basically what classic WoW was, except for it was actually good. And that got a lot of people to play it. I think that, that's pretty much what it was. Dark Age came out. I never really got into a lot of the old MMOs. Like, the whole idea of, like, losing items whenever you die, like, to me, that was just, like, a non-starter. Like, I'm sorry, I just, like, I didn't enjoy that. I was like, yeah, you know what, this isn't fun for me, I'm just done, right? And I've always felt that way.
didn't prevent the game from providing
Casual?
players with meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Why? Well, I would say that the accessibility and the broad appeal primarily came from Blizzard innovating in game flow and usability. And this is where it's a bit harder for modern World of Warcraft, because it's not just fighting against other MMOs. Unlike classic WoW, modern WoW is fighting against YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Netflix, Amazon Prime. You get the point. These days, everything is a service. They're all competing for a limited number of hours after you come home from work. It's also fighting against the problems of having an aging audience with less free time.
Was that supposed to, was this, Okay, so... yeah, I mean, that's kind of true. I think it's true. Most of WoW's audience is aging, and yeah, I mean, that's what they get for trying to keep old subs on life support rather than creating a new game that'll get new subs, right? Or creating the game for new players. And yeah, that's true. I don't think that a lot of people, who's going to be on Twitter? If you're like me and you play WoW, and you play WoW, on your PC, while you're doing everything else at the same time, I'm online in WoW all the time, even though I'm not necessarily playing the game. So while I go on a flight path, I tab out and I maybe check something on Twitter, or I'm watching a YouTube video on the second monitor, etc. Right? And that's what most people do. So I don't really know about, is Instagram directly competing with WoW on, users and, viewers? Probably not really.
I mean, I know, I sure as hell can't play Classic, like I played the Burning Crusade back in the day when I first started. Now that means that in order to feel like they're staying with the times, Blizzard had to fight harder to grab players. Now, part of this may be intentional, part of this may just be down to game industry design trends, because everyone has been going through the same problems. Because just about every game right now, these days, it's trying to hook you in, and as time has went on, the tactics to do that have advanced. You've got your daily login rewards, which some games do. You've got a lot of games that have very fast and easy to knock off task lists that will grant you very time-efficient rewards, like your dailies and your weeklies.
Wow,
Modern
how exciting.
World of Warcraft has to compete with all of that, but here's the struggle. Much of that runs counter to the principle of providing people with meaningful work. It isn't...
It's not like you have to compete with that. It's the same as, Twitch doesn't have to compete with Pornhub. If people want that type of a game, they're going to go and play that type of a game. They don't need to make... They can be two separate things with two separate entities. There are a lot of people that they want to go and watch porn. And then there are other people, and they want to go and watch video games, or people talking or reacting to videos, right? Usually, people go back and forth, and they like both of them. Just because this is something that's common doesn't mean that every single person needs to encapsulate this in their content. Or reinforce this in their content, whatever you want to call it.
All about excitement and instant gratification. It's about the player knowing that there is an easily accessible hit in your service and not the competition's. And that's why you see things like Titan Forging, weekly content that's massively rewarding, and content typically having a front-loaded efficiency curve, like Mythic Plus, where getting the weekly chest is your most important thing to unlock. Many of these things are exciting, and when you look at, say, World of Warcraft Legion, much of that game was designed to be exciting. It expanded Titan Forging massively. It added in the random legendary item drops. You kind of get the picture. But then, of course, when you think about the things we liked about Legion, a lot of that is, I'd say, the meaningful work, like the advancing your character, advancing your artifact, collecting your artifacts, unlocking your skins. Those things felt great. Now, in order to be a viable competitor in the attention economy, modern World of Warcraft has had to implement a whole bunch of things that I'd say are counter to the goal of providing meaningful work. Back in its day, all the Classic had to do was be a bit less punishing, a bit faster, and a great deal more usable and polished than the competition, and that's what it needed to edge out. Nothing there fundamentally prevented that game from providing its players with meaningful work. But of course, work is just half of it. Relationships are also a fundamental part of the positive feedback loop of meaningful work and meaningful relationships that leads to satisfied players. The instant gratification that hooks players, well, that tends to run counter to the meaningful relationships thing. Either by those quick hits being available solo or being easily match-made, as with Islands and Warfronts.
Well, there's no
doing these things with a guild is as satisfying as ever, pretty much. But by making it easier and very possible...
No, it's not. It's not as satisfying as it ever was. That's not true at all, in my opinion. I would say that it's substantially less satisfying because you don't have a unique fucking if you do like Black Temple and you kill Illidan, there's nobody else that also killed Illidan on LFR. It's like you have like this unique thing that you have now because you've done this as a guild. Whenever you as a guild accomplish something and now your gear is red while everybody else's gear is green, that doesn't really fucking matter. Nobody cares.
To do it without a guild, it opens up a worse version of the game to more people. Yes, you can work on your goals, but it will be minus the banter that builds relationships.
Absolutely.
And indeed, I really think these things are just so tied together. Meaningful work creates meaningful relationships if the systems are tuned to push people in that direction. Yet, as always, there's a bit of a problem with humans, all of us, where I'd say we're always down for completing the most expedient version of our goals, even if that means a degree of compromise. And I think that's a bit of a tricky thing with design, because that means people will engage with your product, but maybe not in the way that is the most long-term healthy. Now, the other fundamental change is empowerment of the player. You're so much powerful than you were in Classic. Indeed, in Classic, friendships would form while clearing a camp of Murlocs, because the Murlocs would just wreck you otherwise. Now, that does still happen today, but to a far lesser degree.
No, it doesn't. Not unless you suck.
In a world where 2 to 3 mobs at a time can kill you, banding together with your fellow adventurers, well, that's pretty darn important. Now, I believe that in tuning the game that way in the past, Blizzard codified the need for cooperation in the minute-to-minute gameplay loop of really the bread and butter of how people experience World of Warcraft initially, questing. Now, that is, of course, very different today, to the point where I think the positive feedback loop of meaningful work and meaningful relationships has been somewhat damaged in the live game, but not...
Well, it's non-existent. It hasn't been damaged. It just doesn't exist at all. Like, nobody cares about making relationships in the game because it's like a McDonald's relationship. It's like the relationship you have with your cashier. It's like, okay, thank you, have a nice day. And actually, you don't care if she has a nice day or not, but you're just being polite. Or sometimes you don't say anything. You don't give a fuck about this person at all. They don't care about you. They're just there for the money. You're just there for the food, right? And that's all there is to it. That's basically how relationships are in WoW. They are goal-driven, and they were in Classic WoW also to an extent. But the goal was the initiation of the relationship, not necessarily the main focus of it, right? What was the PvP tournament? Probably next week. I don't know really when, but it will be soon. Your viewers jaded as fuck because you're a streamer that has chat to do everything with you? Not really. I mean, like, I played this game for 15 years. Like, I played WoW for like almost 15 years, since 2006. I've been a streamer since 2016, maybe a little bit in 2015. What do you think I did before then? Like, I mean, I understand this game very well.
Really purposefully.
Okay, let's go.
Indeed, I think it is a culmination of small changes here and there, a need to compete with other games, and the perceived need to keep up with trends, even though I would not necessarily think that they particularly needed to keep up with many of the modern trends of gaming. So what's the result of all this for me? Well, I think it means that Classic WoW works fantastically for people who want deep escapism and a lot of playtime. It was a slow, mechanically limited game that managed to provide people with meaningful work and meaningful relationships, and therefore a lot of just long-term joy. Battle for Azeroth is very different, though. I do think that in order to be more immediately engaging, it's probably a little bit worse in its ability to provide people with meaningful work and meaningful relationships by default, but it still can provide those things.
Come on!
If you just play with a guild. But
if you go out of your way to, okay, if I want to go out and make friends, I'm going to go do a quest. Hi, everybody. And then they just don't respond because it's probably a bot. But, you know, I mean, like, then nobody gives a fuck. I mean, the thing is that, like, WoW, I would say, I will go out on a limb and I will say this. If you were to take a sample of the entire population of the world and then the entire population of WoW players, I think there are more people percentage-wise in the population of WoW players that are introverted and not necessarily outwardly going and social. Because of that, those people need to be forced. I mean, I think forced is a little bit of a strong word, but heavily motivated. Very, very strongly motivated to step out of that bubble and interact with each other. Okay? Oh, yes, it's very, very true. You cannot expect people to go out of their way to make these relationships. That Blizzard, like in Classic WoW, you had to make the relationships. And I think the relationships should be almost forced. That's what made the game good. You never quit during Wrath and BC or Vanilla, even whenever you ran out of content that your guild could do, because you were playing with your friends. Like the friends are what really gets you through the content droughts, not a raid or some other sort of filler content that nobody cares about.
Is that it does also provide an easy way out. You know, just avoiding that stuff. You can do a heck of a lot as a solo player, and the loot system is very much designed around a weekly checklist basically. Of high-time efficiency tasks, rather than a sort of months-long path to BIS. And I really think this has led to a bit of a fragmentation with the player base. I think we're now at a stage where all this stuff about the sort of the modern game, I think that's what most people are used to. Now, I started playing initially during vanilla, not on my account, and then I properly started playing the game on my own account of the Burning Crusade.
Whatever it takes.
Most current players probably started with Wrath, or maybe an expansion or two later. That's just a function of time. It's nobody's fault. There's no judgment there.
No, there is judgment. If you started playing in like Mists of Pandaria or WoD, like, you're just wrong about everything, okay? Like, that's just it. There it is, man. Like, unless you played since vanilla WoW, you can't have an opinion on the game. There it is. Yeah, dude, imagine playing in MoP and then thinking that you know what's going to make the game good. Yeah,
just that, right. You know, people are used to different things. Classic is going to be a very alien version of World of Warcraft that's visually similar to many of the more modern players of the game. I think World of Warcraft right now, it's trying to appeal to more players than ever in more playstyles.
Yep.
And when I say trying to appeal, I mean it's designed to appeal. In fact, I'd say that modern World of Warcraft is quite specifically designed to do a lot of things, to accomplish a lot of goals. Typically, if Blizzard wants an outcome, they'll pretty much directly implement a system to make that outcome happen. Well, back in Classic, it's fair to say the game was a lot less designed. It was a pretty simple set of mechanics applied across a large world that just happened to be slow and not a whole lot more. Yet, as time went on, the tendencies of players were codified into the design of the game, resulting in Blizzard making things that were on paper more tailored to their audience and more appealing, yet in doing so they maybe lost a little bit of the texture that people appreciated from the older version of World of Warcraft. But even saying that,
well, they didn't
it's hard to just sit down.
They didn't appreciate it. They just needed it, right? It's like game developers often make this mistake. They give players what they want. Players don't know what they want. They're fucking stupid. Most players, they have no idea what they want at all. Blizzard gave people what they needed with Classic WoW. Blizzard gave people what they wanted with BFA. You think you do, but you don't. Oh yeah, you're right. PvP templates, Dungeon Finder. There are people that wanted Titan Forging and War Forging and Thunder Forging back in the day because they ran out of content to farm. The people wanted like other random legendary. I don't think anybody really wanted random legendary items, but there's like other stuff like that. There's plenty of examples of the players not knowing what they want. And that's why, as I said, you don't make game design decisions based off of a popular vote of the player base. There's a reason why, you know, there are game designers and then there's just like random people on the forums that are mad about shit. It's like, for example, there's a lot of things that players would want, right? Like repair costs, like lower repair costs. Most players would want that, but they don't understand how that affects the game as a whole because they don't understand the game as a whole because they don't understand the game. They play like maybe like a few hours a day versus somebody that makes the game.
And argue that Blizzard should arbitrarily make the game slower and more arcane.
Right.
And I think that's the messy position that we're in. Classic World of Warcraft won by being an accessible MMO that anyone could get into in 2004. Now, if you want to be an accessible MMO that anyone can get into in 2019, that's just a fundamentally different thing to try to achieve because the broader gaming industry has shifted to be a bit more psychologically aware and tricksy, where game systems more and more are tools to achieve a goal rather than means of expressing a world and a fantasy, and I really think that's it. I think modern WoW and Destiny 2 are actually fairly similar in structure, a big weekly list of things to do, mostly rooted in instanced content. It's just a matter of picking what style of game you prefer. Do you want the more fast-paced modern version of World of Warcraft? Okay, I know it's not MoP, but in comparison to vanilla, let's be real. Or, you know, do you want the shooter version, which is Destiny? And I really think that's the core of it. Modern World of Warcraft is closer to Destiny 2 than it is to vanilla WoW in many ways, and a lot of that's just a reflection of modern game design trends. So to tie up what we opened at the start of this video, it's not really that one's better or whatever, it's that they're just different. Classic is a slow burn game for people who want shared escapism, a sort of gamified second life that provides meaningful-ish work and meaningful relationships. Modern World of Warcraft, well, it does have those things, but it's a faster action version of that. It's maybe more designed for, 30-minute to 60-minute bursts, and that's sort of a different type of playstyle. They are games for fundamentally different audiences. So all that said, why is Classic doing so well? Why is old school...
Well, why is it doing so well? It's because it's a good game. It's not a game that's centered around participation metrics and revenue. That's why it's good. Like, it's a game that doesn't treat players like numbers. Like, I mean, that's why. I mean, this is not complicated at all.
RuneScape doing so well, because in both cases, those are games that are older in their design. They're games that are not using most of the modern psychological engagement tricks. And indeed, why do more games designed like classic and old school RuneScape, why do they not emerge?
Trying to make my
well, I think I'd say a lot of it's because the immediate designs of modern games being actually more gripping to a lot of people right off the bat. The older style, I think, is just not as grabbing for a broad audience. Why? Well, I think it's because the older style prioritizes long-term. In the case of classic and OSRS, people already know what they're expecting going in.
Yeah,
really, a lot of players are bought into that experience through their existing attachment to the IP. It's going to be a lot easier for classic WoW or old school RuneScape to do well versus a game that is designed in their style that just happens to have came out but has no prior attachment with players. So yes, there are numerous IPs that have more old school design philosophies, especially in the MMO space, but in a lot of cases I'm really going to think that those games are going to struggle in actually getting people to stay for the long haul, because people are not going to be bought into the quality of the overall experience like they are with OSRS and like with Classic WoW, but those games are also going to be competing with all of the super attention-grabbing modern games. And I suppose if I was to round off this video, actually, when I think about World of Warcraft and enjoying it in the most ideal way possible, I think it's worth bringing up Taliesin and Evitel. Reason being is that I think that in the way that they play the game, which is with a guild that they've been with for a very long time, that they do numerous actual holidays and meetups with, they're going to get meaningful work and meaningful relationships. And I would say one of the issues the modern game faces is that it doesn't do the best job of naturally pushing people to...
Well, yeah, obviously fucking not, because he literally just said why in the beginning. He said they've been in this guild for a long fucking time before Blizzard changed the dynamic. So yeah, all these people that have these really strong social interactions, all are having them because of things that were created before they changed the paradigm in which they developed the game. Like a fucking chorus. Come on. Jesus Christ, duh.
Towards those things. But I do think that if you're able to seek those things out and find a guild that's a really good home, then you can get a lot of enjoyment still from the modern game. Now, yeah, sure. I'll admit, because I have sort of, my guild kind of fell apart and I didn't really get around to getting another one. I still want to do that. It means I'm not experiencing the current game in the best way possible, but they're a pretty good example of how to play modern WoW and enjoy it. I think it just happens to be that naturally modern WoW is not as good at making that the default experience, because modern WoW in
the default
wanting to get people to be able to play the game and be able to log in and pay their sub fee, it has lowered the barrier to experience with the game by making so many things soloable and on a match-made queue and things like that. So it's an interesting design problem overall for Blizzard, and I think this is pretty much the core of my exploration of Classic versus Battle for Azeroth. How in many ways there's some similar things, like where they both are trying to be streamlined and accessible. It's just doing streamlined and accessible in 2004 versus 2019. It's just so completely different. And how modern design trends...
No, I mean, obviously it's different, but if people come back and they play Classic WoW in 2019... then doesn't that kind of show to some degree that people in 2019 and the way that they're developing games now is wrong? I mean,
are impacting all of them, and just the attention economy. It's such an interesting topic, and I'd love to hear what you think about the things that we've talked about today. So please let me know what you think down below. And there is another video that I did for my second channel. It's a little bit less WoW specific. It is actually a video about Classic WoW, but it's just written for a more general audience. But it talks about meaningful work, meaningful relationships, and also the over-justification effects, which might be something that I will do as a separate video on this channel. But if you're interested, you'll probably enjoy that video. So thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time.
Okay, so let's talk about this. I think the video obviously was really good. I liked it a lot. I think that it made a lot of sense. And he talked about the core issues, right? And this is I'm glad that more people are bringing up the core issues. And everybody's always talking about how, you know, oh, well, War Forging is bad, or Titan Forging is bad, or, you know, whatever is bad. But the core issue is that the game, at its very, very fundamental level, is being developed and designed with a misguided principle. That is the, in my opinion, fundamental problem. That's what matters. Wiped it on a chair. I actually flicked it on the ground, if you have to know. But it's the same thing, because something new, some players are willing to get a chance back then. So many players are willing to give it some show. No, here's the thing, right? Is that what did you just do? I did what I want to do, okay? Makes the same video 100 times? Yeah, well, I mean, like, the thing is that, like, we're going to keep making the videos. We're going to keep talking about it until Blizzard's oh, yeah, you made the video so many times. Oh, geez, just give up this whole thing about legacy servers. Just give it up. Just quit making the same video. Oh, we're never going to get classic. Oh, it's never going to happen. Oh. No, give me a fucking break. I don't want to hear about that shit, dude. Like, of course it can fucking happen. Like, the more that you talk about it, the more that you bring it up, eventually Blizzard, I'm going to tell you something. Eventually Blizzard's going to start listening. They're going to eventually start listening. Now, how long is that going to take? Kind of a while, probably, but they will listen. Arrogant? No, we're not arrogant at all. We're this is like, let me show you something, okay? You want to see why I think they're going to start listening? Where's my tweet here? Just a second here. This is a tweet that they made. Set your alarms. The Mythic Dungeon Invitational, it continues in 5 hours. The World of Warcraft account has 1.5 million followers. Look, I'm going to give you $100 for beta access. Let me hold a beta key. Set your alarms. It's Dorkageddon. Esports and WoW sucks. Nobody cares. So, yeah, I mean, like, it's not like all these other people are like, oh, well, I can't wait to see what's going to happen in the MDI. Are they going to AoE another pack of mobs? Are they going to bring 3 rogues again? Oh, my God. You know, give me a fucking break. You're feeding to toxic people? No, it's not toxic to want the game to be developed in another way. Fuck you. No, it's not at all. I want the game to be the way that I want it to be. And you know what? Nobody's going to tell me that I'm fucking wrong for that either. He put Asmon in the thumbnail because he knows he'll be on another Asmon stream. Asmon is just WoW clickbait at this point. Asmongold reacts to Asmongold's face in Bellular's thumbnail. Inevitable. Where is this here? Me symbol netfair, me see Asmongold on thumbnail, quick video, me entertained. Thanks. That's true, man. Very true. It's amazing how putting a gaunt neckbeard on your thumbnails makes it like the most clickable thing in my feed. Hey, listen, dude. That's the way it goes. Nathaniel, you mean punchable. Yeah, I'm sure Nathaniel with the Illuminati symbol in your fucking name. Yeah, you're a real badass, dude. I like Asmongold. I can't stand that McConnell guy, though. True. Big true. Okay, let's see. What else do we have here? Is there anything else that's really interesting to look at? I like the aging Anduin bald transition. Kind of reminds me of someone. Okay. I have to get degrees to someone. Why does not have to compete with Netflix? Yeah. How many people right now are probably watching me on your second monitor? There's tons of people that are probably watching on like the second monitor or some kind of shit, right? It's very, very common. It's what I usually expect to see. So, yeah, I mean, like, this is all the time. Like, whenever I'm watching a stream, I never sit down. Oh, wow.